Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Stewart Theater. My name is Kathy Crossland, and it's been my pleasure for the past year to serve as the chair of the Harrelson Fund Committee here on our campus. I want to tell you a bit about how we're going to conduct the event before I move into the comments to introduce our speaker. There are about 900 people assembled in this auditorium. The people who arrive after 3 o'clock will be watching this on a live stream feed in the ballroom across the hall. We also have students around the campus that are watching this on live stream and colleague institutions around the state that have asked for the link that are watching it on live feed. The event's divided into two parts. The speaker will make his formal comments, and then as soon as he lets us know that he has concluded those, we will begin a question and an answer period that will be coordinated and moderated by Dr. Tom Miller from the College of Engineering. There are seats that are reserved down in the front for anyone with special needs. So if you let the ushers know, we have the seats reserved, and this will also be carried not only in live interpreting services, but it will be closed captioned on the live streaming that will take place. So with that, I would like to begin the 2012 Harrelson Lecture. John Harrelson was the chancellor of this campus, and he was actually the first person that was given the title of chancellor. He went from being an executive dean to being the chancellor. And he served for nearly 20 years as the chancellor on this campus. He was the first alumnus to rise to that position, and he loved what was then known as State College. After his passing, he left a gift to the university that was to be used to do two things, and what he deemed was his modest estate at the time, and he specifically requested that there were two areas that he thought were neglected at State College back in the 1940s and 50s. One, very impressively, was to improve the art collection for the university, and he specifically asked that the student union at that time, or the college union, be upgraded a bit in terms of its art collection, and we're in the process of upgrading the entire building at this point. And the second thing he asked that his money be left for was to provide a lecture series for the students and the faculty and the staff of this university that was open to the public at no charge to them, where we were to bring a person of great distinction, of scholarly accomplishment or public achievement to be with us and to share in this moment at the university. The first lecture was delivered here in 1962 by Adlai Stevenson, who is then the ambassador, United States ambassador to the United Nations. And he spoke on a topic that sadly is still true today, the perils of peacemaking. Since that time, we've had a large collection of persons who have come to the university to deliver the Harrelson Lecture. And we are pleased that we're adding a name to that list today. When the committee began meeting, we had three things in mind. One was to honor what John Harrelson wanted, which was a person of great public distinction and accomplishment. The second was to honor the 125th anniversary of the founding of this university, which is taking place in the coming year. And the theme of that is tradition and transformation. And the third was to find someone who could follow up on the Emerging Issues Forum that was held in February around the theme of investing in Generation Z. For those of you who don't know, Generation Z are those people who have been born since 1990, who have only known life on the internet and are sometimes referred to as the net generation. And I know that there are some of you in the audience because I've seen you, and so I think it's important for you to know that the Harrelson Lecture tradition started here before the Krispy Kreme Challenge. Even though that one is extremely well known and for a notable cause. Because our traditions always start close to home, we were delighted to find out that the person that we had invited to deliver the Harrelson Lecture is also a native of this state. We were delighted to find out that he was willing to come and be with us here, because speaking on university campuses is not something he often has the time to do. And so when we were able to attract Chris Hughes, we knew that we had found the one person that we knew that could not only address the theme of the university, of tradition and transformation, who is heavily invested in Generation Z, who is a native of this state, and who will represent to our students the kind of life that we hope each of you will earn and will enjoy. Chris was born in Hickory, North Carolina, and his parents were involved in two of the most precious workforces we have in this state, public school teaching and the paper industry. And we are thrilled that the two people that made the tradition of Chris Hughes possible are in the audience today. His parents, Brenda and Ray Hughes. And they are joined by friends of theirs from the Wilmington area, the Stewarts, not for whom the theater has been named, although we might talk about that before you leave. And so we have gathered both our family and Chris's family here, and he has asked that we use his name, Chris, rather than the more formal Mr. Hughes. He attended elementary and middle school in the Hickory Public Schools, but when it was time to decide on what to do about high school, he surprised his family by showing the initiative that would later characterize everything he did in his life and applied for a scholarship or what he deems a very significant financial package that allowed him to attend Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. That was a transforming moment in his life. From there, he attended Harvard on a scholarship. And at that point, the story becomes much better known about what happened in the dormitory at Harvard when three kids got together to talk about their ideas on how they should connect the students at Harvard with one another. Out of that was born the concept of Facebook. Chris was simply identified at that point as ID user number 5. Today, there are approximately 845 million people that are Facebook users, and it's estimated that 1 in 8 people in the world use this form of social media for communication. After his sophomore year, the 3 of the colleagues decided to go out to Palo Alto to try to do some venture capital fundraising. At the end of that summer, we're thrilled to say Chris was the only one that went back to college and graduated, because that's the first lesson we want our students to know. There is something noble in achieving what you set out to do and obtaining and finishing the degree that you started. When he returned to Harvard, he would go back in the summers to work in Palo Alto on Facebook, but that didn't prevent him from having another experience that we hope all of you will have before you leave this campus if you're one of our students, and that was a study abroad program where he spent a semester in Paris and wrote his senior thesis on urban planning in Algiers during the pre-colonization period. He graduated from Harvard, magna cum laude, with a degree in the history and literature of France. So we know that there is a soul of a liberal arts major sitting inside the brain of the entrepreneur, and with the insight of the psychologist and the ability of the management people. Following his graduation, he went out to Palo Alto to work with Facebook on a full-time basis. Now, remember, this was all in a short period of time. He entered Harvard in 2002. He graduated in 2006, having already co-developed Facebook. He was in Palo Alto in that summer when a young senator from Illinois, who was just getting an idea about how Facebook worked, contacted them about how to set up a possible page for himself. And Chris was the person who was the human service face of Facebook, and that was how he met Barack Obama. Following that, he then took a leave of absence from Facebook in 2007 and went to work with who was then the candidate, Barack Obama, as the director of his social media. I think we all know how well that concluded. Following the election of President Obama in 2008, I think Chris decided it was time to take a little respite and sabbatic leave, and he went to work as a entrepreneur in residence for the Catalyst Group in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which gave him some time to think about the next steps. That led to the development of Jumo, which everyone is familiar with, the online organization for people who want to follow nonprofit causes around the world and contribute their time and energy to them. That has since led to a new enterprise which is when he announced in March that he had purchased and would be the publisher and editor-in-chief of a venerable magazine, The New Republic, in the United States. What we see in his life is this blend of both the tradition and the transformation. His life is a constant transformation, but it's one that's done without losing sight of his personal principles, his ethics, his core values, or where he came from, and certainly who his family is. We find that commendable. He's become influential without becoming arrogant. He's become wealthy without being stingy. He invests his resources that he earned with his own equity into the causes that are personally and passionately commitments of his. He is open and approachable. He doesn't travel with an entourage. He, in spite of the fact that his work has had a lot to do with the lessening of privacy around the world, and certainly everyone recognizes his face. So it is with a great deal of pleasure and pride that NC State University extended an offer to ask Chris to be the 2012 Harrelson Lecturer. And it was with a great deal of jubilation when we learned that he had accepted the offer. Now, you can co-found Facebook, you can help elect a president, you can develop JUMO, you can become the editor-in-chief of one of the oldest magazines in the United States, but when you know you've really made it is when your mom and dad want to drive 4 hours to hear you speak and bring their friends with them. Welcome to NC State.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have been fortunate enough to be introduced several times over the years, but I don't think I've ever had such a kind and thoughtful introduction. So thank you, Kathy, and thank you for having me here today. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking today about the future of media and social media. I'm really looking forward to having a dialogue with all the folks that are in this room and across the internet after my remarks. I really hope that as I'm talking, you can second guess everything that I'm saying and also consider what are the other topics that we can introduce into the conversation today, so we can make sure to cover everything from Facebook to the nonprofit world to the future of media. So a little over a month ago, I saw Mark Zuckerberg, who's the CEO of Facebook, and we were both chatting a little bit about what was going on in our lives. Mark was having a normal day in the life, preparing to take Facebook public in the next few months while continuing to try to build a high-quality product that I have a feeling most of the people in this room and a few 100 million people across the world use on a daily basis. He asked what I was up to, and I told him that I was considering investing in a magazine called The New Republic, one of those relics from the previous century that still sits on coffee tables here and there, but at least amongst a lot of circles and a lot of people of our generation is considered to have a very, very challenging future. He looked me in the eyes and he furrowed his brow as only Mark can, and he asked me in complete befuddlement, why in the world would you ever want to do that? And having known Mark for nearly 10 years, his reaction did not come as a complete surprise. And he's certainly far from alone. There are few people, particularly from the technology culture of Silicon Valley, that are investing in what are considered old media brands. These are not very attractive items on the auction block these days. Savvy investors are much more interested in what's going to be the next Facebook, what's going to be the next Twitter, or what's going to be the next Pinterest, much more so than any company that supports the practice of one of the oldest of arts in our country. Thoughtful storytelling about our place in the world and the challenges that we face. Old media and traditional journalism are more or less out of fashion, at least amongst the digerati, and are considered to be decaying artifacts in a world of new inventions and flashy new tools, services, and apps. But here's the thing. I come from this world, this digital universe of social technology, and I firmly disagree. I see an important future in which narrative journalism flourishes, but in order for that future to be a reality, it requires this university to do its job, and the students in this room, the curious minds, to continue to open themselves up to new ideas throughout the world. Let me tell you a little bit about what I mean. In the past few years, a whole field has emerged that scientists have pursued called choice theory. It's the theory of how we make decisions in our everyday lives. Many of you might know the work of Richard Thaler or Cass Sunstein, who wrote a very popular book called Nudge, that suggests that the design of a choice-making moment can make all the difference in helping us to make the right decisions, even when they're not fully thought through. Daniel Kahneman's recent book, Thinking Fast and Slow, also studies the way that we think and decide. These are very important topics to take on, since in a given day we make hundreds, if not thousands, of choices. What all this work shares in common is an understanding that every decision that we make, whether it's conscious and deliberative, or automatic and impulsive, every decision is the result of the information that we have and the expectations that color our perspective in the moment that we make that choice. Take something as simple as what you had for lunch today. When you make a decision, should I have the salad over the fries? You may be thinking about what's healthy, or if you choose the opposite and choose the fries instead of the salad, it may be a more impulsive choice, but you know you'll be a little bit happier afterward. Either way, your decision is made based off of the assumptions that you have and the moment that you enter. Or you can take something that's arguably, I would say, plausibly more significant, like who to vote for, or even whether to vote at all. When you make a selection, it's based on what you've heard about the candidate, where she or he is from, and what you viscerally feel to be true, the stories that have brought you to a certain moment when you then make a decision. My point is that information and narrative are inescapable. They constantly shape how we think about who we are, what we do, and how we and what we value. These narratives help form all of our own original ideas and color the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis, from the most significant to the most casual. Outside of books, there are only a few big journals where new ideas have entered our discourse and where the cases have been made for how we should behave in the world and what we should make of it. Many of them have been around for over a century, and they have names like The New Republic or The New Yorker or The Economist. Magazines and reviews in particular have filled the critical gap between the daily news cycle that newspapers have traditionally covered, what's happening today, and the longer ideas pieces that have traditionally been the domain of the book. Journals like these have helped thoughtful people sort through the challenges our world faces and the decisions that we make as a society. This is the way democracy works. We rely on journals of big ideas to help us understand what we should do as a society. You can be conservative, you can be liberal, you can be somewhere in between, but we need big ideas. And we need strong media institutions that help us make these informed decisions. Not only does a vibrant media system keep our politicians honest, but it also opens up the opportunities for a critical discourse that people from a wide variety of perspectives can join in. You take this week, take the magazines that are on the newsstands today. I went through the airport this morning and just took a look at a few. The New Republic, which I actually saw before it came out this weekend. The cover story details the serious human rights abuses that are happening in Syria, where there is a movement of people who are fighting for the future of their country to make it democratic and a place where they feel that they can flourish. Most of the time we read headlines about what's happened yesterday or what's happened today, but it's rare that we can dig in a little bit deeper and understand who these people are, what they care about, and why they should be important to us. The New Yorker, in this issue, highlights the emerging world of gambling in China and what that means in a country that is exploding economically and has a whole class of people with newfound disposable incomes. And The Economist has a deep dive on the person that Barack Obama has nominated to lead the World Bank, arguably one of the most important institutions of the world. And The Economist takes a different view and would like to see another person, a woman from Africa, lead the institution. My point isn't that we all need to run out and read all of these magazines every single week through and through. Instead, it's that these are the institutions which bring us out of the day-to-day headlines, which bring us out of the news feeds where we just get little bits of information and remind us what we care about as a society and reinvigorate our passion for these values. These institutions, they flourished in the 20th century, and I don't believe it was by historical coincidence or just a fluke of the market. Americans turned to strong brands for quality journalism, for ideas, perspectives, and news. And in the future, contrary to what many would suggest, I think these brands can and should remain strong because that desire for big ideas will not abate. What will change, and what is changing, and we have to face this head on, is that the form of how these ideas are being delivered is being radically transformed. 2 weeks ago, the Pew Research Center released their annual report, which studies how news is produced and how it's consumed. That survey found a few things that many of us, particularly Generation Z in this room, might assume to be true. Facebook and Twitter are important ways for people to consume news and interface with the world outside of themselves. But it also observed that the same social media news consumers have not given up on the practice of seeking out news through websites, through apps, and through search. In fact, the social networks are complementing their curiosity and their desire for news from other outlets. This is a good sign. I think it shows us that media outlets of the future need not die, but they must understand and adapt to the rapidly changing technological environment. The old methods of delivering the news are quickly fading, and unless we understand the challenges to adapt to the new ones, these institutions may be under serious threat. Start with newspapers. I would ask people to raise their hands how many people have actually read. Actually, let's do this. How many people in this room have read a physical newspaper in, let's say, the past week? Raise your hands. Many of you. That's a good sign. The numbers, what about in the past day? This morning? Wow. That's an enormous drop-off. I would say 60–70% said in the past week, and maybe a quarter in the past day. Regardless, 20 years ago, newspapers were in their heyday. And I firmly believe newspapers, at least in the traditional understanding of what they are, as a paper thing that arrives on your doorstep in the morning, that's an old idea. Newspapers in that form are dead, or will be very soon. In the next decade, there will only be a decreasing appetite for a paper product, and I think a turn towards more digital methods of delivery. But that doesn't mean that people don't want timely news content that's delivered daily. In fact, as we can see in this room, people absolutely do. News websites are actually flourishing, not only from traditional outlets like the New York Times, but the Huffington Post, which sold for almost $300 million, the Daily Beast, and a very promising, relatively new player in the field is Politico. Many of the most successful news startups embrace a form of shorter, more direct journalism from a wider array of authors and journalists. And as we've seen, the line between journalist and blogger has become increasingly gray. This has become old hat by 2012, I think, for probably most of the people in the room. What I think is important, and it's the part that's easy to skip over, is that readers look to the brand to signal the type and the quality of content, and that instead of all of newspapers dying, we're actually seeing the introduction of new brands that more and more people are reading. Similarly, and this probably goes without saying given the age of everyone in this room, but the era of the nightly news which was anchored by a wise, thoughtful voice, has almost certainly passed, and in the next decade, I think, will very much fade. With delayed video recording the rise of the web, there's no reason to wait until 6:30 p.m. or to wait for Tom Brokaw to narrate the events of the day. Instead, we can and we do access web video all the time that tells us what's happening in the world. And the people behind that content are a loose network of bloggers and videographers all over the globe who are helping us see the stories as they happen on the ground. Even in countries with limited internet connectivity like Syria today, we're able to see images and hear the voices of a people fully under siege. All of these different news sources and products have completely changed the traditional news business models. And for nearly half a century, news organizations made their money from some combination of subscription and advertising revenue. But in 2012, given the proliferation of news sources and the ease with which information can be recorded, there's less reason for individuals to pay and subscribe. With more eyeballs in more places, it's become more difficult for these same institutions to convince advertisers that a newspaper isn't any more important place to advertise than somewhere like Facebook or like Google. And the money coming in from simple display advertising is just not reaching the same levels that it once were. This begs the question of how will these companies continue to survive? What's important, I think, to note is that this is an important question which there are no easy answers to, but it's not Facebook or Twitter or Google necessarily that are taking these companies directly head on. Why? Because none of those companies are content companies, even though many people in the media business feel directly under attack by all of them. Each of those companies is separate and distinct from the media and content that is spread on the platform, but they don't produce any of it themselves. When we started Facebook in 2004, which is now, believe it or not, over 8 years ago, we started it out of our Harvard dorm room. And contrary to what Aaron Sorkin, the writer behind the film The Social Network, would have you believe, our dorm room actually did not look like a luxury condominium. And my parents are in the audience, as they already came up, and they can attest to that. And unfortunately, for many who might romanticize the experience, I can also tell you, contrary to what's portrayed in the film, there was no sex in bathrooms. I promise that, Mom and Dad. And this idea of the alcohol-fueled hackathons, I don't know if you remember this scene, but there's this scene where all of the intern candidates gather around and start seeing how fast people can drink, or you have a shot every time something happens when they're coding. All of that is more than a little bogus. There may have been a little bit of alcohol involved, but it was not a competitive frat-style hacking event, as Mr. Sorkin and the rest of those folks would have you believe. But what the movie does get right is the story of Facebook emerged from a group of relatively diverse, independently minded people who found access to other bright minds and capital that enabled us to start building a business. Mark Zuckerberg was studying computer science, but also psychology. Dustin Moskovitz, our second roommate, was studying economics and had actually just started taking computer science classes the fall before we started Facebook. And as was mentioned in my introduction, I've never coded a single line in my life. I was studying history and literature and of a place across the ocean in what is very much considered the old world. But we purposefully built a platform that had no particular voice outside of the content that our users wanted to share. Facebook was not then, and still today, is not a company that funds the development of new ideas themselves, or narratives, or any particular kind of information, or even incentivizes, I would argue, the type of content that is spread across the network. None of us knew what Facebook would become, but what we did know was that Facebook would be more akin to a telecommunications business than a media company. More akin to the paper that the news was printed on than the newspaper itself. more akin to the wiring that enables lots of people to communicate than the ideas or the production of those ideas or experiences themselves. This approach to the network, to not imbue it with any particular meaning or have it create content of itself, was one of the major reasons that Facebook and other companies too, like Google and Twitter, have been able to adapt to different cultures and different languages all across the world as quickly as they have. But Facebook isn't just a bundle of wires. It's a network that, and differently from others, that enables us to listen to our friends and family first. All the conversations that have historically, this is what I say when I talk to people and try to explain to them what Facebook is and how it's not a crazy new invention in a lot of ways from what's happened in the past. All the conversations that people have on Facebook, they've had for decades, for hundreds of years, in person, over dinner tables, in their dorm rooms, on the phones, but they're now all happening online. On Facebook, for the most part, it's the same people engaging in that conversation, the people that you know, the people that you care about. You're able to have that conversation in a single protected environment through Facebook. Now, some technologists will tell you that Facebook and Twitter spell the demise of the expert journalist or the trusted brand. The question they ask is, why do we need news from a trusted source when we can just listen to the chatter on a social network? But it's the same reason that we needed news 20 years ago, 50 years ago, or 100 years ago. What the success of Facebook illustrates is that we trust our friends and family and colleagues to help us filter out what the experts and idea generators want us to think. Just because we increasingly use our social networks to find big ideas and good content doesn't mean that we don't want journalism. It just means that we want, and rightly so, to discuss the content that we see with the friends and family that we care about, the same types of conversations that we've been having for a very long time. We should not confuse the means of access, the social network, with the type of content that we need. We live in a world where the talking never seems to stop, where there's always another comment, there's always another tweet, there's always another text. But that need not mean that the age of insight or analysis is dead. Given the chaos in this sector, it might seem foolish for anyone to invest at all, let alone a certain kind of ideas-driven journalism. And when I say invest, I don't just mean from a financial perspective for myself. I mean for people like everyone in this room. Some of you may be thinking of becoming writers or journalists or joining the media industry in one part or another. For those of us who care about this type of journalism, we're making two bets, one short term and one long term. In the short term, we're betting that people will pay somewhere along the value chain for a certain kind of experience. And contrary to conventional wisdom, I see a robust and flourishing online commerce market, particularly for digital goods. People seem willing to pay for things on the internet, but you have to give them a good reason to do so. One reason is for convenience or the quality of content. Think about why people download songs from iTunes or emusic.com instead of going to BitTorrent. Or for some, it may be about the social status, like the right kind of application on your smartphone. Or for others, simply because they're addicted. I mean, think about how much money is spent in the Zynga economy, which makes it now a multi-billion-dollar company being traded on public markets just because people are willing to pay for digital goods. My point isn't that people will pay for everything, but if you make the value proposition right, people are willing to open up their wallets on the internet. The bigger bet, though, that we're making, those of us who want to invest in journalism and these types of institutions in the future, is that institutions like this one, like this university, and on the people who are in this room. Long-form, thoughtful journalism will survive and, in fact, flourish as long as there are curious minds, like the minds in this room, who are engaged with the world around them. And universities like this one are responsible for cultivating these practices in young people like you and like me. The tradition of a liberal arts education is at the heart of, I think, what has made America so great and so successful for such a long period of time. And if you actually take a look at comparative educational models around the country, around the globe, ours is incredibly unique and, from an outsider's perspective, almost absurd. We take 18-year-olds, we ask them to leave their homes, enter brand new communities. We purposefully ask them, and in many cases incentivize them to interact with people who are completely different from them, who may be from different places, different races, have different social, economic status. And then we ask them to study a whole wide array of subjects. Macbeth and biochemical engineering, the history of France, and the economic future of South Africa. And in the best of institutions, we reward sampling different subjects, different topics, delving in to questions that, even though we may not have the perfect answer to or figure it all out in one single undergrad seminar, that process of asking the questions and doing the research still matters. From this education, all the students in this room eventually will leave here and will specialize. You'll go on, you'll choose a career, maybe you'll go to graduate school, you'll choose one particular thing. One of these fields will become important to you, more so than the others. But the liberal arts education, if it's effective, and that's a big if, should have cultivated a sense of wonder at the world, and most importantly, a desire to continue to learn. It's a desire to challenge yourself to explore new ideas, to continuously think about your place in the world, and am I doing the right thing? And to be thoughtful about the role that you play in it on a day-to-day basis. The only way you can do any of those things is if you discipline yourself to constantly seek out thoughtful analysis, good reporting, and big ideas on a daily, if not weekly, if not daily basis. We're all going to continue to use Facebook and Google and Twitter, and they're amazing tools, and we use them all the time, and that's a good thing. But I will also challenge you to build the habits of turning to trusted brands, of quality journalism, and ideas to help fulfill your need to understand the world around you. Whether it's in Kindle, whether it's in print, whether it's on tablet, wherever it may be, subscribe to one of these Big Ideas magazines. Start the practice now of seeking out thought-provoking ideas and fresh perspectives on the news and the world around us. Now's the time to establish that habit of looking outward and cultivating a sense of curiosity and citizenship. As long as we all remain thoughtful and engaged, there will be another great era of journalism ahead of us. And Facebook, Twitter, and Google will all make that a reality. Thank you for having me.
I'm Tom Miller, and I have the pleasure of moderating the question and answer session, and I'll tell you how that's going to work. First of all, we've been collecting questions from the audience, and we had some questions that were sent in advance. And our student body president, Chandler Thompson, and student senate president, Ethan Harrelson, are reviewing the questions now and are going to have the responsibility of asking those questions at the microphone. I had the great pleasure of meeting Chris and hosting Chris in the NC State Entrepreneurs Garage earlier today for lunch, and had a very lively dialogue there. And I actually want to start off the questions, Chris, with a follow-up to one of the questions that came out there. And that is, you know, when you think about the fact in this new world of media, this new world of news, as you've touched on so eloquently, we have now almost 900 million people and growing every day that are not just consumers of news, but in some way have the ability, and many of them are producers of news as well. So understanding, not only from the traditional sources, but from those trusted family, friends, et cetera, but the deluge of news and information that comes over the internet through the various social media outlets. Can you touch on, you know, your thoughts as to what that means for all those consumers and producers, all those 900 million people out there, in terms of their moral, ethical, and intellectual responsibility, both as producers and consumers of information that flows through so seamlessly across the internet?
Yeah, it's a big question. I should also say, for questions and answers, this is the fun part. So you guys should ask all kinds of crazy things that are on your mind. I'm happy to talk about anything: news, Facebook, politics, whatever. It's wide open. On this particular question, I mean, there is just so much information being created. Eric Schmidt, who is the chair of the board at Google, has a great quote where he says something like, the amount of information that we're creating in a single day now is equivalent to the amount of information that was created in the past in a decade, or something like that. And the curve is going in the direction where it's even more extreme. So there's no shortage that there is an immense amount of information. The question is, how do we organize it? And how do we figure out what to pay attention to? And I think that whether this is something that will always be the case or is just going to be the case for the next 10 to 20 years, I don't know. But I firmly believe that we will look to our friends and our family who say, hey, did you see that great piece in? And they might say that on Twitter or Facebook or in person. And we'll look to the brands that we trust. So that will be news organizations. That will be blogs. It doesn't have to be something that's enormous and been around for a very long time. But we have to look to those institutions to know what's important. As content creators, I think we also have a responsibility and an opportunity to think carefully about the world around us and share our opinions. I mean, there is now the opportunity to develop a coherent, thoughtful argument. And before, when that might have just been a paper that you gave to a professor, or maybe you shared with a couple of friends, you can publish that on the internet now. And in many cases, start a dialogue about whatever your research is on, whatever you're thinking, whatever it is that you're thinking about. So I challenge myself, and I would challenge everyone here to be constantly thinking about what is unique about your own perspective or your own story, and what you as an individual can be sharing with the world. I think it goes without saying that that's perhaps the fundamental opportunity of the internet, is it enables us all to speak loudly and broadly, and we should treat that with respect and responsibility, but also embrace it in our work.
Great, thank you. Do we have a question, Chandler?
Okay, first, someone from the audience wants to know if you have a Twitter.
I do, and I use Twitter. Usually I check it once a day to find out what people are chatting about. I think Twitter is a fantastic tool to stay in touch with thought leaders and celebrities and all kinds of people who are sharing very short snippets about what they're doing. So I use Twitter. I use Twitter less personally than Facebook, mainly because I wonder why. No, but from a very, I mean, I use Google products more than I use Facebook. I mean, it's not out of I'm a Facebook shareholder and I have an interest here, but I'm inside Gmail and Google search in those products probably more time than I am inside Facebook. But for me, between Facebook and Twitter, Facebook just feels I get more quality stuff. I know what's happening amongst my friends and amongst my family, and that's why I go back, and that's why I use it. But there's quite a lot of studies that show that my experience. I mean, this Pew study that I mentioned. If anyone is interested in this particular point, you should check it out, because it shows that that's actually the most common experience. Is people tend to go to Facebook to get to use a filter of friends and family, and they go to Twitter to use thought leaders.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ethan?
So the next question we have would be, given the tremendous opportunity you have for philanthropy, how do you determine what issues and what groups to support?
That is a very, very good question. I think a few things. I think there's a lot of, in order to figure out how philanthropy works or what one should do with capital, or even, I'm going to get a little academic for a second. What one should do with capital, or what one should do with one's time in terms of a career perspective, I think it requires considering what are you good at, like as in what do you know, what do you enjoy, and we were talking about this a little bit with a smaller group earlier, and what does the world need? What is it that if you don't do it, there's a smaller likelihood that it will happen, whatever it may be. So with philanthropy, to answer the question a little bit more narrowly, we give a lot of thought to what causes are important, but if we don't provide the capital, will it not happen? And there's a lot of, in the political world, there's a lot of issues that I care about that require significant capital on an ongoing basis. In the nonprofit world, the same thing is true. I mean, international development is a great example. You could work on water, you could clean water, you could work on housing, you could work on hunger, you could work on so many different issues. But the one issue that I've become the most passionate about recently is work that a few groups are doing around unconditional cash transfers and the ability to provide the poorest of the poor with the capital to live their lives better. So I'm giving a circuitous answer to your question, but I think that you have to look at each field and think about what you as a person bring to it and what is most needed, and then make a decision. At least that's the only way I know how to do it.
I'm going to ask a follow-up to that, Chandler, if you don't mind. Are your fellow Facebook founders pursuing their philanthropic passions to the same extent and vigor that you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dustin Moskovitz has set up a personal foundation. Sean Parker led Causes, which is an app on Facebook that enables people to give money and has given quite a bit themselves. I think all of us are doing different kinds of philanthropy, but we're all trying to figure out not just like what's the combination of like what can we give money away to, but also what can we do with our lives that's going to have an impact on the world and make it a better place. And so I think it's some combination of the two for all of us.
Great. Chandler?
Another question from the audience. In the new age of social media, what is the line between public and private information? How do we or are we defining and enforcing that line?
I think we're making it up as we go. I mean, the public and the private, this is one of the most fascinating cultural and social questions, I think, that all of us in our generation are going to have to sort through for for the rest of our lives. What is it appropriate to share? When is it appropriate to share? And also, how do we control the information that's created about us, which we may not have had any part in creating? The way that I organize my thoughts around this are around a pretty simple principle, which seems to be that the cost of privacy is increasing structurally. And so by that, I don't mean like what you pay for it. I mean the effort that is required to keep something private is getting more and more difficult. You think about a party that you may go to on Friday. Even though you don't take any photo of it, you don't bring any camera. If one person has a camera there and they choose a photo, even they could put it anywhere. They could put it on Twitter, they could put it on Facebook. You don't have to be tagged in it, but that photo exists. And if you don't want to be in that particular photo, you have to go out of your way to not be in it. But you think about that across the board in a lot of different instances. So I'm not one of those people who thinks that privacy is disappearing. I think that privacy we have to keep some information to ourselves or to a smaller group in order for society to really function and work. However, I do think that it is becoming harder and harder to keep information close to the breast. It's possible to do it, but we need to be focused on it. And that's why, particularly speaking to an audience like this, I think that we have to be incredibly conscious and thoughtful about what we're sharing, when we're sharing, and how we're doing that. And for a generation that's come of age, sharing is the default. And that's great, and that's a good thing, and that makes the world a better place, but that doesn't mean that it should always be what we do. We just have to be consciously engaged with it, which is something I challenge myself to do just as much as anybody else does, I think.
Ethan?
As someone who was very involved with President Obama's 2008 campaign, do you feel that he has performed well, and has he fulfilled your expectations? And do you think you will be as involved in his 2012 campaign?
I love this question. Yeah, I mean, I think on the whole, the president has done a very good job. I think that it's very easy, and it's also very good for us to be armchair quarterbacks. I think us, as in people on the left, people on the right, for everyday people to sit around and say, I would have done this, or I would have done that. Why didn't he think about this? That's a really good thing, because it keeps him and it keeps everyone else in the administration on their toes. There's lots of things that I wish he and the administration would have taken a different position on. As a gay man in particular, I wish that the administration would come out and say something incredibly simple. Everybody should be able to marry the people that they love. You know, it's like, really, guys? You just like, Barack Obama, you can't say that. Anyway, however, that's one thing that's important to me, and very important to me. But the work that the administration has done on a whole host of issues has been incredibly important in impacting the lives of everyday Americans. I mean, you think about everything from the healthcare bill to saving the auto industry to the Race to the Top program, which has changed the way education works, to the things that the administration has done that have simply kept the status kept the status quo, and making sure that we fund the programs that are important to us as a society, everything from food stamps to domestic and higher education. Think about what the administration's done on loans for people in colleges like this one. I mean, it's made it much more affordable for people to go to school. So, on the whole, I think the administration has done a very good job, and it goes without saying that I'm actively supporting the president in his re-election bid.
Can I ask a follow-up to that one as well? When you were involved in in Barack Obama's social media campaign, were you able to measure the impact of that on voter turnout or voter choice, or the impact that it had versus traditional media on influencing the outcome of the election?
Yeah, and this is where technology is rapidly changing campaigns. I mean, the big media narrative that we all see is that technology is enabling grassroots mobilization, which it is. We saw that in the United States in 2008 with My Barack Obama. You're seeing that in the Arab Spring across the rest of the world. That's the story that gets the most attention. This question of the campaigns being able to articulate and explain a message to a particular demographic in a particular place is a story that isn't told nearly as much. So, for instance, if this is possible, and actually the Romney campaign, it seems, is doing this just as well, if not better, than folks on the left, but doing digital targeting to find out who you are, what you're interested in, what you care about, to then serve you an online ad before you watch a YouTube video or on the sidebar of some news website that speaks not only about Mitt Romney as a candidate, but whatever he wants to see happen on a given issue or in a given category. As you think about how cable and television and the mass media is likely to go in this direction, and the time that we spend consuming video and news through video and entertainment through our computers is likely to go in this direction, this is only going to become more and more powerful. I mean, there's a scenario here where 4 years from now, 8 years from now, you could see candidates speaking directly to you as a NC State student who cares about the environment and pitching you on that particular climate change plan. I mean, you could get very, very fine targeting, and it seems like that's the direction that things are moving in.
That seems very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Chandler?
So I don't know if Chancellor Woodson has told you this, but he does not have a Facebook page where he can be liked. He also does not have a Twitter account. Kind of going along with that, because this question might help him out too, your answer, and speaking to the privacy question earlier, how do those of us who are a little older and less willing to sacrifice our privacy engage with these social media tools?
I need to correct something. I have a Facebook page, you're just not a friend.
Touche. Yeah. I mean, you have to be on these tools. You know, it's like not getting a telephone in 1930. You know, it's like, I mean, obviously I come with a bias, but these are fundamental ways that people are communicating with the people they care about. And privacy is a very real concern for a lot of people, as it should be, as I was just saying. I think it's something that we need to be very thoughtful about. None of the networks require you to share information in an ongoing way, which is important. And Facebook in particular, I mean, you can really ratchet down your privacy settings, as it sounds like some folks in the audience may have, to just share information with the people that you know and that you care about. So I think that I think it's a wrong assumption that going on these networks necessarily sacrifices your privacy as long as you manage them well. It's like, you know, getting a cell phone doesn't mean that you always need to be available. You can just turn it off or set expectations with your friends that you're not going to answer it at a certain time. You know, I think a lot of us do that. But I do think, I mean, if you're not on Facebook or Twitter or using social media in general, you need to be. Everyone else is. I mean, it's true.
So I have one kind of a joke question, and then we'll move on to the more serious one. But someone in the audience wanted to know, is your Facebook relation status single?
No, it's actually engaged. Thank you.
And then two, so how can digital media outlets or I guess older media outlets like the New Republic or the New York Times shift to a more profitable business model? And how under your leadership will the New Republic change this kind of business model?
I think there are no easy answers to that question, and I don't think the organizations that are out there, the news organizations that are out there, I think all of them have different models. And the model of the news magazine is actually pretty different from the model of the newspaper. Magazines like the New Republic have never been flourishing businesses. They never made a lot of money. Whereas news on TV or even some newspapers really did have a heyday there where they had incredible margins. That's no longer the case for them. In general. I do think that there is an opportunity if you do two things. One is build a brand that people feel like they can trust. People pay $126 a year to subscribe to The Economist, and The Economist makes money. And people pay $140 a year to subscribe to the New York Review of Books, which is a little bit smaller of a publication, but is also very much an ideas leader, and they make money. So I think that I think it would be very self-defeating to say that these institutions can't make money in the next decade or in the next era. Although I do think that we all, and I say we now, because this includes the New Republic, need to think really creatively about how to monetize the brand and the product. That means branching out into ancillary categories, things like events, where you can attract a lot of the writers, a lot of the people that you cover and engage them in dialogue. That may mean branching out to other categories and other business lines to diversify the revenue models. I think it probably does, because the idea that we're just going to produce a print publication and sell a few ads, I mean, that's over. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these businesses can't flourish. Many of them are finding a way to do so.
Just to follow up on that, there's no doubt, though, that the new media has put tremendous financial pressure on the traditional media outlets, and some of them have folded, some of them are struggling. And so my question is, I agree with you about the importance of those where you've got basically deep dive journalists or professionals, but with that kind of pressure, are we in any kind of danger as a society of losing that very valid, deep, trusted information that we've enjoyed for the past century?
If we don't value it, I think we are. And when I say we, I don't mean that government should prop up these institutions or that we should take that, some countries in Europe take that approach. When I say we value it, I mean people like us. We spend, we'll spend, $35, $50 on, I don't know, a shirt or some apparel, but when it comes to spending $35 for a subscription to a magazine, a lot of us won't do it. And that's because we can get information free and we can get a lot of it online, which we do, but I think having the physical object, I still read a lot of these magazines in print, around, available, and in your bag, just by its very nature increases the likelihood that you will interface with that information. And so I think if we make the decision that we value thoughtful content, and we as consumers have to make a commitment to purchase it, and then the business models can survive. Although subscriptions aren't going to be it. Again, I think it has to be subscriptions plus events, plus some advertising, plus potentially other models that we can experiment with.
Certainly. Next question, Chandler.
What has been your biggest challenge and what have you learned?
That's a good question. I think there have been a lot of moments when some of the short-term things that we've faced on some of these projects that I've worked on have not worked out. You could think about, I would categorize them all in a similar category. I can think about on the Obama campaign when we lost New Hampshire in the primary to then Senator Clinton, and we all sort of assumed that the whole house of cards was going to come down. Or you can think about with Facebook when we turned on the news feed in 2006 and the entire network freaked out. And our faces were on the TV for the first time as people who were not listening to the very customers that we were serving. And I feel like in a lot of those moments of of challenge, the first inclination, or my first inclination, is to pull back and assume that that whatever we've done has been wrong, or that we have to completely change strategies. But I think listening and observing the situation in hand is incredibly valuable, and taking my time, and I would suggest to other people taking their time in making sure that the strategy that you adopt is the right one is incredibly valuable. There would be a way, in Facebook's case, the news feed, people didn't like it. Facebook could have just turned it off. We could have made the decision, and that was some of our initial inclinations. Users don't like it, let's turn it off. And now it turns out, 5 years later, it's immensely popular. It's listed as one of the most popular features on the network when you ask users to do it. So taking a little bit more time to think more carefully about a strategy was what really benefited us then. So with all of these challenges, I feel like taking your time and being thoughtful is something I'm constantly challenging myself to do, because it's easy to just do what's impulsive, but not necessarily that natural to dig in and get a little perspective.
Great. Ethan?
So this topic's been pretty important across campus this year. So you mentioned your support for marriage equality. What do you think people listening to this lecture should do over the next 5 weeks to keep marriage discrimination out of our Constitution of North Carolina?
I think it's going to be an uphill battle, but that makes it all the more important one to wage. I think, I haven't followed North Carolina as closely as I'm sure a lot of people have in this room, but from a nationwide perspective, we have fights happening in North Carolina, Maine, Washington, Minnesota, and Maryland. And not to mention cases in the courts that are slowly going to the Supreme Court. So in some of these states, it's defensive. like in North Carolina, where discrimination is trying to be written into the Constitution. In other states, there's enormous opportunity to make marriage possible for all kinds of people, like in Maine and Washington. So I think there's two key things. In the short term, engaging with Equality North Carolina and all of their organizing work across the state over the next few weeks is going to be incredibly important. They have a Facebook page. I challenged a lot of people to like it in the fall. I said I would give $1 for every person who would like it up to a certain level, which worked well. So it's become a beehive of activity and conversation. So I would connect with them there and pay attention to their very laser-focused strategic priorities in the state over the next few weeks. And I would also say, no matter what happens here in the next few months, to also have perspective that this is a national fight and a fight that's happening across the country and in the courts as well. And it's going to be long and slow. Whether we win here or whether we lose here, it's one state at a time, one ballot measure at a time, and we got to get to a point eventually where it's the law of the land in all 50. But slow and steady is going to win this race. It's going to be a marathon and not a sprint. And I think it's really important to bear that in mind.
Chandler?
Another question from the audience. Digital media have cut significantly into investigative journalism budgets. To get in-depth analysis of news stories, there needs to be funds both before an authentic analysis can be made, that is, into the education and formation of real journalists, and budgets to send the journalists out. How do we solve this issue, and where do we find the money to fund that?
Yeah, investigative journalism is incredible. It goes without saying, it's incredibly important. And I think that there are more people coming out of journalism schools and engaging with the practice of journalism now than I think there ever really have been historically. A lot of those people are not even necessarily going through journalism schools. A lot of very successful journalists are starting to blog and are finding that to be a really a meaningful way to practice this art. So I think doing it first is important, but investigative journalism in particular does cost a lot of money. And the only way that there's going to be money for that from an institutional perspective is if we value it, which I've said a couple times this afternoon, and continue to support the outlets that are doing it. I think on the whole, there's a lot to be optimistic about. There are new nonprofits, institutions like ProPublica, the Center for Investigative Reporting, that have more and more budgets. I'm on a foundation board which enthusiastically supports a whole host of groups in this field. And I think that we should have perspective and remember that while the New York Times investigative journalism budget may be going down, the number of people who are practicing the art and the other sources of funding, I think, are going up somewhat. And hopefully will go up even more if more people continue to ask that question and we value it. But it's a matter of raising awareness and being invested and engaged with the practice of it.
Ethan?
So what percentage of your success do you attribute to luck versus planning and foresight? And how crucial do you think your college education has been to your success as an adult?
It's always a mix of both. I mean, one of the things I was saying earlier today to a smaller group of students was, I think there's this sense that we came up with the idea of Facebook, and the idea itself was just, what is now a $100 billion company. And that could not be further from the truth. I mean, the idea was a strong idea when it came about, but it's taken 8 years for Facebook to grow to the size that it is now, and it's been after product cycle to develop the business model, to build applications on a whole host of other devices, and it's a long-term investment. And so there's certainly some luck involved. There was certainly some luck involved in Facebook, and the other things that I've done is there isn't anything else that we do in life. But the way you minimize, I think, the way you minimize your vulnerability to luck, to upside or downside, is to try your hardest to accomplish your goal, whatever that may be, every single day and over a longer period of time. So it's some combination. It's almost certainly some combination of both. On the college side, I think again, I think what is so valuable and so important about a liberal arts experience in college is that not only does it cultivate analytic and intellectual skills and tools to conquer the world, but it helps you know what you like and what you don't like, and what you're interested in and not interested in. So for me, the college experience was incredibly, incredibly valuable, and something that I wouldn't trade for the world. I mean, this is the period in your life when you get to ask big questions, read big books, do scientific research, and do all of that in the course of a single day, and hang out and spend the evenings with your friends too. It's a very unique time that is incredibly valuable. It should be fun and enjoyable, but from an intellectual perspective, it's very hard to find that type of environment where you get to think big, to do all these different activities all at once. So you got to take advantage of it.
So I'm going to follow up on that. This may be our last question, Chris, but you really struck me this afternoon when you said, and you've just repeated it here, took 8 long years to go from 0 to $100 billion company. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit older and my time frame's a little bit different, but I think that's pretty remarkable. So I think it's very remarkable. And whether you guys had any idea what you were really going to achieve at the time or not, is really irrelevant at this point in time. But you're immersed in this now. You are involved in this in so many different dimensions, from the business dimension to the political dimension to the social change dimension. And Web 2.0 in general has really provided a platform that is fundamentally changing the world. And I would like to know, if you have any thoughts for these students who are big thinkers, and some that you met today. I hear some of the same kind of whisperings going on in the garage about, we could do this, we could do that, we can change the world. What are some of the things that you see? What are some of the big opportunities that you see out there, knowing what you do about social networking technology and about society, that you see as big opportunities for the students in our audience today?
I mean, I think I am clearly an optimist on this sort of stuff, but I think that we live in an era where a 21-year-old, or in our case for the Facebook, a group of 19-year-olds can come up with an idea, and through persistent focus, have it become an enormous company, and more importantly than company, product that hundreds of millions of people use, and I think generally enriches their lives on a daily basis. So I think we live in a really unique historical time where that opportunity exists, and so from my perspective, it really means there's no excuse not to embrace that. I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody needs to be a tech entrepreneur, but it does mean that I think everyone should be thinking about what they have that's special and unique, what skill set that is, what the marketplace, and just as importantly, if not more importantly, what the world needs, and try your hardest to pursue it. I say 8 long years because 8 years still strikes me as a long period of time. But my point is that even if you have a great idea, you put it out on the internet tomorrow, it doesn't become an enormous company. With some diligence and with some persistence, there's a very real opportunity that can turn into something significant and big, and that is something that should be embraced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Well, this is what it means to have a really great day at a university. You had a birthday party at 1:30, you hear a scholarly, inspiring lecture at 3 o'clock, and you get to go hear the installation of the bells for the bell tower at 5 o'clock. And so it is the perfect ending to an absolutely wonderful day for us. We appreciate everyone who has come here. And for me, the world is divided into 2 kinds of people: the people you really want and would like to have dinner with, and the people you try to avoid having dinner with. And I think we could say Chris Hughes is someone we'd all like to have dinner with.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Thank you. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Thank you.
And because we do try to uphold our Southern traditions, even though Chris and Sean live in New York, we have a small gift from the Harrelson Committee that we hope every time you see it will represent positive and wonderful memories from NC State. We appreciate you coming here.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.